incredible time it's been. It's so nice to be together from all different places, falling in love with Jesus all over again. History is on a throneward trajectory. Nobody can slow it down. Nobody can really speed it up. I don't know, there's that one mysterious verse that Pete would probably be able to understand alone. How do we hasten the day of the Lord, Pete? Prayer. Prayer is how we do that. Humbled again. You did write about me in one of your books, and I am now famous for being bad at prayer. That was what you... we won't talk about the eyes bit, Pete. History really is on a throneward trajectory, and when we get into these moments, I can almost glimpse it, you know? You get this small taste of what it's going to be like to be the big family. Mission's not going to go on forever, but family is. Family in the presence of God from all the nations and tribes and tongue. History's headed to the feet of Jesus. And I'm just honored and privileged to have grown up literally my whole adult life in the midst of this very bizarre 24/7 global family. You have changed my life, and I'm honored to be in your midst and to follow the Lamb who is worthy with you. We are anticipating something so beautiful. History is headed towards Jesus. And this morning, Holy Spirit, if you don't show up, we'll never see Jesus again. What we know of you, Jesus, is a fraction of you. And so, Spirit, show us your best friend again. Because we're hopeless to know Jesus without you. And the family said, Amen. It's my honor to pass on to you this morning what was passed on to me. And I want to share it with you. It's not my unique revelation. It's the deposit that was given to me. I want to share about the heart of disciple making. And there's so many elements we could talk about. If you didn't get to go to Danielle Strickland's From Mustard Seeds to Mountains talk, I would just encourage you to listen to that. It was so profound. I think Roger Nix is going to be doing a seminar on discipleship later today. You could talk about reproducible discipleship. We're seeing the beginnings of a disciple-making movement in Lebanon as one widow has seen over, how many groups is it now? About 80 different churches started out of one widow. You could talk about reproducible discipleship. You could talk about the principles and the practicalities of discipleship for ages and ages. And I just want to pass to you the deposit that I've been given, which is the heart of disciple making. And so I'm trusting this morning that is what the Lord will allow us to open up and go into together. I had drank my fill of the world's love, and it had left my heart broken. Anyone resonate with that? I was thirsty, and I kept drinking and drinking and drinking. I overwhelmed so many people, I can't count them, up to 17. It was in second grade, and I said, you will be my best friend forever. Second grade guys just don't know how to deal with that, you know? Every girlfriend I had, which was every year from 7 on to 17, I said, you're going to marry me. Girls they don't know what to do with that stuff. You think I'm intense now. I just overwhelmed everyone. And it's funny, humans don't know how to be the Messiah. You can worship them and try to get all your needs met, but they just reject you because that's the only option. It's reject you or die under the expectation of Adam Cox. And so there was this moment, though, when I was 17, July the 5th, 1998, and I can hear the voice today. Jesus said, he said, you've tasted the world's love, and it's broken your heart. I knew exactly what that felt like. And he said, but now you're going to taste my love, and I'm never going to leave you. The unfailing love of Jesus took a hold of the deepest part of my heart, and I was wrecked and I was ruined. Jesus was the only one I wanted. I had been in and out of church growing up, but that was the first time I didn't have to try to love God back. It was like something inside me called the Holy Spirit was magnetizing me and drawing me to this man named Jesus. I don't know anyone like him. Since that day at 17, I have been just drawn from the inside, inexplicably drawn to Jesus. And I don't know how to even explain it to you, but I want to know him. I want to love him. And I fall down over and over and over, and he picks me up, and I'm moving from the inside out towards this Jesus, this one who is unfailing love. When I tasted that love, I longed for the whole world to get it. And man, was I overbearing. I was just as overwhelming as I was with teenage girls when I wanted them to marry me. I was overwhelming with trying to get people to love Jesus. Just a wreck of evangelistic zeal. I knew God was real, and I knew he loved me, and I wanted the whole world to know that he really loved them. And so I pictured myself speaking on microphones before thousands of people and telling them that Jesus was real, but I had this really big problem. My biggest fear was public speaking. I used to get hives up my neck. I managed to avoid every single public speaking thing all the way through school, faking sick or whatever you need to do. But there was this tension in me. I wanted the world to know that Jesus really loved them. And so I had dreams of revival, of the power of God breaking out in nations. And I believed that I could maybe be one of the people that told the world that Jesus was alive and he loved them. And so in pursuit of this longing for the whole world to meet Jesus and come into revival and the swoop-de-doop of the Spirit to land on nations and the power of God to break out, I decided to go to ministry school. And I was there for the first 6 months or so, and I was a part of this massive church in Kansas City. About 20 years old, and I was just one of the guys in the crowd. And one day, this giant of a man walked up to me, 6'7", and his name's Floyd McClung, for any of you who know. He was the pastor of the church, and I was somewhere out there in the seats, and he walked through, and he walked up to me, and he said, and I'm like, this is my moment. Like, I'm about to meet Floyd McClung. And he's like, hey, my name's Floyd. I said, I'm Adam. We had just briefly gotten to see one another, and he said, would you want to go to a movie with me? I was like, that is the weirdest thing that I would have imagined. I thought he had a prophetic word. I thought he was going to, I've seen the call of revival on you, and the nations are going to be saved. He asked me to a movie, and so I awkwardly went to the movie. We didn't talk much on the way there. He was trying to strike up conversation. We watched the movie. It was mediocre. We got home from the movie, and I was waiting. I was like, okay, he's going to, share something with me. And I kind of sat there awkwardly in his passenger seat. And it was like, all right, hope we can do this again sometime. And I got out of the car, and I'm thinking, I must have totally done something wrong. I went up to my apartment. No one was there, and the lights were off. And just as I was going to flip on the light, I heard the Holy Spirit say, get in the center of the room and kneel down. So I went into the center of the room, and I kneeled down on the ground on this really ugly salmon carpet. Good thing the lights were off. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, Adam, tonight Floyd's taking you to a movie, and from this day on, everything's going to change. People are going to know who you are. Things are going to happen, but I want to tell you, Adam, that I saw you first. and that you'll never be more important than you are right now. That I love you. It was incredible. Floyd started not only taking me to movies, but on walks with his dog. I don't like dogs. And I was always waiting for the really spiritual stuff. So one time I just cranked up the conversation. I was like, listen, Floyd, and we were walking. He was having small talk, and I'm like, I'm going to see nations changed. I want to see revival break out. I've got dreams of people turning to the Lord all over the place. He's like 6'7". He gave me that big Floyd smile. He's like, your dreams are awesome. He said Jesus had dreams for all nations. He said he loved the crowds. He fed them when they had no food. He healed them when they were broken. He spoke the love of his Father to them. He said, but that's not how, that was not his plan for the revival to come. That wasn't his plan for the nations to be changed. He said he had a plan so strange, so bizarre that it could have only been intentional, Adam. He said, this man that you're in love with, Jesus, who you want to see all the nations worship, he spent 70% of his time doing nonsense with a few people. That was a terrible thing to say to me. I mean, in one moment, all my grandest ideals and dreams just crashed to the ground. I was so disappointed that that was the plot. And he looked at me and he said, hey, I would like to spend time with you and your friends. I would like to invest my life into you and the life of Jesus into you. Because this was Jesus' strange and wild and bizarre way to see the whole world changed. And then he looked at me and he said, Adam, what if for the rest of your life, there were always a few that you invested your whole life into? What if there was always a few that you could reproduce the life and ministry of Jesus into? What would that look like? At the moment when my ideals came crashing to the ground, I felt something happen in this bizarre challenge. Something rose in me in this moment. Floyd started spending time with us, my friends. In fact, you could say that Floyd's investment into me is why I'm standing on this stage. On one of these all-of-life nonsense trips, he took me to England in 2003, where I bumped into a very weird guy named Pete. I liked Pete right away because he made fun of Floyd within about 5 minutes, and Floyd's a Viking. He's 6'7". I was like, he talks to him like we do. Nobody does that. And I appreciated that about Pete. It was Floyd's disciple making that even got me into this place, into this weird, awesome 24/7 family. I remember talking with Floyd early on, and he said, whatever I'm going to do with you, I'll do it as long as you're willing to do it with someone else. And I said, I can't, I'm too young. He said, there's someone you're farther along in the journey than right now. You can do it. I remember him beginning to put within us that deep investment, all of life before Jesus. It was so imprinting and so impacting the way that he walked with us. I've been fortunate I can count 11 people that have made this kind of investment. If I had time, I would tell you their names and what they've put into me. I want to honor one right now. Graham, would you stand up? This is my father in whom I'm well pleased. It's his birthday today. you have shown me the humility of a loving father. What it means to love my girls. I have such a high bar. I don't know if I've ever met a man more humble than you. And I honor you and the investment and deposit you've made into my life. Thank you so much. You'll know it. When I was going to ask for Julie's hand in marriage, I basically told him that I didn't know if his daughter was good enough for me. I was having anxiety attacks, and he, for 3 weeks, walked me out of anxiety that I've been in prison to my whole life. That was my introduction to Graham, if you want to know a little bit about him. When I think about the challenge that I picked up from Floyd, I can list 30 people that I've invested into. Almost all of them I still have contact with. And each one of them has left probably a greater mark on my life, some out of deep pain, than I have on theirs. When I think about Floyd's challenge into that orphan 20-year-old kid, to the wisdom of a different way, the wisdom of investing your life into a few, I cannot be more thankful than for that challenge. It's my heart, it's my hope that maybe we could pick that up within the movement of 24/7. I want to pass on to you what was passed on to me. Doing this life-on-life investment has not always been fun or easy. Man, there's been times where I've been just way too overbearing and challenging, and I've hurt some people. And there's been times where I've under-supported and not been present enough. And there's been a few times where I actually got it right with Jesus. I can think of one of my discipleship groups of deep friends, and I poured my life into them at the end of the kind of year period that we had walked together. All but one of them left the church. Please pray for me. That was a terrible season. I remember having to really dig deep and go like, man, that was a bad idea, Floyd. There was a moment when I was trying to regroup. It took me a few years to even get the guts to try to invest into somebody again after that one. There was like one guy that didn't leave the church. And I remember Jesus comforting me one day, and he said, hey, I was giving my life for the world, and every one of my guys had walked away except for one. And, of course, the women were all there because they're better disciples. I mean, if you ever feel like you suck at discipleship, think about Jesus, the best discipler in history, perfectly revealing the Father, and everybody walks away from him and doesn't get it. Man, that helped me out, I'm telling you. Does that encourage anyone else? This thing of like investing all of your life into other people, to see them go on beyond yourself, it's painful. It's hard work. And if I look back at those 15 years of trying to take up this practice, what I see more than anything is it's the wisdom way of the Father. I'm glad that it wasn't just Floyd that gave this challenge, but Jesus was the originator of this challenge, the heart of disciple making. That Jesus actually in resurrection looked into those guys' eyeballs and he said, and I love it, it says, they worshiped but some doubted. These were about to be the ones entrusted with the whole kingdom. It was just them left, right? And some doubted. Can anyone identify with feeling insecure about this commission? Of feeling like you doubt more than you have confidence in God. You're stumbling your way forward, but there's something inside of you. The unfailing love of the Spirit is pulling you to follow this man, Jesus, and try to run with others. Try to bring them along. Man, he looks at them, and some of them doubt, and he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. I don't know if that scared them to death or comforted them. He said, now go into all nations and make disciples, baptize them in the name, the identity of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. and teach them to obey everything I've commanded. And I am with you to the end. Jesus looked at the insecure. He looked at the doubters, and he said, I have all authority, and I'm with you. You can go and do this. I'm so glad that it was Jesus' invitation, Jesus' challenge that was coming to me through Floyd. Here's the problem with that amazing commission that is still to this day the reason we're all sitting in this room, the reason nations are being changed. Here's the problem. Our generation has a knee-jerk reaction to almost every concept and word in the entire Great Commission. Who loves authority? Who has the warm fuzzies right now? How about discipline? Oh, here's a really painful one. Father. What about command? Who likes the command? Or obey? This is tough in our generation. Authority, discipline, command, obey. I mean, the only part we like in the whole flippin' sentence is, I am with you. But those with commitment issues don't even like that. It's like, that's too close. Can't you just give me some space, Jesus? But what if Jesus did it all in a way? What if he filled in the texture? What if there is a heart to the disciple-making process that changes everything? I want to look at this picture of Jesus' guys. I think we have it. Jesus' crew was interesting and bizarre. A bunch of hipsters with robes. It all comes around if you wait long enough. I apologize for the graininess of the picture. Cameras sucked back then. And so this is the best image that they could capture for Instagram. And so, I mean, this is a weird crew. Jesus didn't want to be alone because, forever the Word was with a family of friends. In fact, when he was going to launch his ministry, he reproduced on earth what he had enjoyed in heaven. The camaraderie of love and humor and affection in everyday moments. This crew was about to be absorbed in everyday life, but it was a strange crew. I mean, who chooses for their core team a zealot who's basically the modern day equivalent of a terrorist desiring to overthrow the Roman government, and a tax collector who's like a right-wing traitor? And these two absolutely hated one another in the ideology of it. I mean, it's like way more extreme than Republicans and Democrats in America. The traitor and the terrorist, and Jesus goes, man, let's just put them on a core team together. Jesus didn't subscribe to your political view in his core team. He doesn't sponsor it. The kingdom is above that. His justice and peace and mercy is coming in a different way. And he goes, this will actually make for great disciple making, because you see, one of the first elements of disciple making is it's life in community. Jesus didn't have 1,000 one-on-one Google Hangouts. His schedule filled up all day. He put the weirdest and the wildest together so they could all bounce off each other in their brokenness and learn not just from him, but from one another. And so he throws a traitor and a terrorist right into the same core team, right? And then for some sibling rivalry, he throws two sets of brothers, because the kingdom really is about family. So he puts two sets of brothers right into the core. And Andrew, the first evangelist, gets the great accolades of finding Peter. And I'm sure Jesus wondered, why did you find him over and over again? I mean, we can relate, though, the brother-sibling rivalries within this group of people. Peter always acting before he thinks. Can anyone resonate with Peter, I love this story of my daughters. My one daughter, who's the firstborn, was trying to explain, it's better to be safe than sorry. And my middle daughter was saying, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you see, you don't want to act and then regret it. You'll say sorry. And she kind of she's not getting it. My daughter's trying to explain it more and more. And she finally says, I'd rather just do it and say sorry later. That's Selah. And that was Peter. I'd rather just do it and say sorry later, right? And then within that, you've got James and John, and what a crew. These guys were calling down fire to nuke villages if people didn't do what they wanted. Come on, Jesus, just nuke them. And then over here, they're like, Mom, please go. Just ask, can we sit on his right and left in the intergalactic kingdom? Like, couldn't we do that? These guys were weird. And then you got Peter and John constantly competing. I mean, John writes into the end of his gospel, one of these disciples ran faster than the other. Just so it'd be recorded in history that he was faster than Peter. I mean, they're fighting all the way up to the gate in Beautiful in Acts, but they end up being the best of friends, but nonstop competing and comparing. I mean, can you relate? This is the stuff of disciple making. I mean, what about Nathaniel? I mean, a little bit sheltered. Jesus walks up to him, oh, Nathaniel, there's no guile in you. Code word. It's like in the South we say, bless your little heart. We all know what we mean. He's saying you're so naive, Nathaniel. You know? And then there's Judas. Maybe a few integrity issues. Oh, we'll give him the money. What are you doing? And then there's dear Bartholomew. We'll call him Bart. Nothing recorded about the guy. He was either so awkward. They're like, we can't even write about it in the gospel. I don't know. Or we're going to get to heaven and it's like, there's Bartholomew's great hidden mansion on the hill, right? It's like, this was the guy. I mean, what a crew. It was life and community. It was life on life. Jesus didn't have a program. His invitation was, come and be with me. All of life is what discipleship is. Learning to love Jesus with all your being. Learning to listen to him and obey him with others in all of life. You see, if all of life is following Jesus, if discipleship is all of life consumed by Jesus, learning to become like him and know him in all of life, then we must have all of life environments if we're going to disciple. It's got to be life on life invitation. So Jesus, he needed to hear them. He needed to see what they thought. I mean, do you remember all these moments when Jesus is grieving over his cousin having died, John the Baptist? The disciples, he says, come away. Here's what it looks like to grieve the ones you love the most. If it was just a 2-hour prayer meeting or looking at the back of someone's head, they never would have learned to grieve like the Lord. Or what about when they have questions about paying taxes and Jesus pulls the coin out of the fish's mouth, but first gives them a lesson on who they belong to. Do they belong to money or does their image belong to God? How will they deal with their money? What about when he's with the woman at the well and they're astounded and they come back and they're like, why does he talk to women? It's an all-of-life disciple-making environment. They had to find out that this one Jesus gave dignity to women like no one ever has. But it was through being with him, wasn't it? Coming off the Mount of Transfiguration at glory. And the first thing they face is one little boy he's convulsing in seizures and demons taking hold of his life. And they bring him to the disciples and the disciples can't do anything about it. And Jesus right there begins to talk to them about how little their faith is. It was an all-of-life moment. It was life on a mission. Jesus had them at weddings and parties. I mean, you have to drink a lot and eat a lot to get labeled a drunkard and a glutton. Jesus loved to party as much as he loved to pray. And all of this was the life on life, life in community, life on mission environment of disciple making. This was the way that Jesus did it. Jesus had in his heart that they would find out, what does it look like to give all of our life to Jesus in all of life? This was his passion. Don't you love all those moments leading up to the end? Man, when I think about being with God in the flesh, what would that have been like? To actually follow Jesus. To catch his humor, to catch his pain, to catch his prayer. I mean, they saw him praying and they said, teach us to pray. That was how they learned to pray, by watching him. What would it have been like for all of life to be enraptured with him, to be caught up with him? All the ordinary moments and all the amazing moments. The moments of healing breakthrough, the moments of boring days. I think there's probably more in the margins of the gospel than we could ever imagine. I like to imagine all the on-the-way moments when the transformation was happening. But all of these 3 years were leading to this like symbolic moment at a table. I think the Holy of Holies of the entire gospel is found in John 13 through 17. If you can picture this table, this intimate fellowship of friends, and they're there, and Jesus has that look on his face. He knows the end is coming, and all of his guys are there. They've seen all the miracles. They've seen all the moments. They've been rubbing against one another over and over in community. They've been on the mission with Jesus where they're being transformed. And it's all landed at a table, like a symbol of what they've carried all the way along. And there's this moment in John 15. And it's as if you would crack open the rib cage of our King. And you would see what is beating right in the center of him. Like the heart of all these 3 years is there. And there is this phrase that has captured us. I want to look at this moment in John 15. Jesus looks at them in the eyes and he says to them, as the Father has loved me, I have loved you. Do you believe that? Do you believe that just as the Father loves the Son, that the Son loves you? His unfailing love is for you in whatever place you've been. And Jesus begins to say, out of this love, this is my command, that you would love one another. And then he begins to explain it. He says, no greater love has someone than this, that one would lay down his life for his friends. And then he looks at them in the eyes around this table after 3 years of all of life with him. And he says, you are my friends. I don't call you servants anymore. I call you friend. Because a servant doesn't know what his master's business is. But he says, I have called you friends. I have called you friends because everything I learned from my Father, I've made known to you. I chose you. I appointed you that you would go and bear much fruit. Now love each other. All of those 3 years, the heart of disciple making is in this moment. It is love. That is the heart of disciple making. But what kind of love is it? It is the love shared between a father and a son. It is the sacrificial quality of lay your life down friendship. The heart of disciple making is this: I have called you friends. This was the crescendo of the entirety of those 3 years. I have called you friends. When I was asking the guys that I walk with about the last year of us walking together, over and over and over again, they kept saying this word, friendship, friendship, friendship. There is something conveyed when you step into the flow of the Father and the Son's love that you are able to release in the world. It is what life on life looks like. It is what life on community looks like. It is what life on mission looks like. Simply put, I have called you friends. If we want to know the very heart and center and mystery of the entire kingdom, that the one who did not need us, as we heard from Johannes Hartl, that he has taken on our skin, entered into our story so that he could simply convey to us, I have called you friends. In all that you do and wherever you go, this is the heart and the center and the mystery and the glory of the table of the kingdom. I have called you friends. I want to show you my group of friends. Look at those guys. Man, I love them with all my heart. On the left to the right, you have 24 years of age to 41 years of age. You've got a automotive paint specialist, a barista, an admin assistant, a restaurant owner, and a community development networker and convener. Man, I wish that was my title. I just get called pastor. So lame. I think I'm going to start taking that up on planes. I am a community development network convener and accelerator. Wow. Really? What does that mean? I have no idea. I want to keep looking at these guys. This is my crew. And I love them. They're single, married with no kids, married with kids. We're totally different. We come out of way different backgrounds. But we have one thing in common. We share, this is our table. We share the beautiful love of Jesus. And the way that this thing happened is I just asked the Father over and over in my life, can I take up the challenge Floyd gave me? So I pray, and I ask the Father, is there anyone I can invest in? And then I go and invite them. I invite them into my life. And sometimes they say yes. These guys all said that they wanted to be a part of following Jesus with me. I wasn't as radical as Jesus. I didn't ask them to all leave their professions. I said they could follow Jesus in their professions. In fact, that would be the beautiful privilege and glory of God. I'm so glad that none of them are really in church work. It means we get to touch the world and put God on display in all of life. I did invite 4 of them to move into my neighborhood, the place that we're living to serve others, and they said yes, some with their families, some by themselves, and they said yes to the messy, beautiful process. I really believe that the more overlap you have in life, the more ability Jesus has to get to your heart. The more opportunity he has to start to meet you and work into your life. Right from the beginning, I let them know that disciple making was Jesus' idea. That Jesus modeled it. That Jesus promised his presence to it. I don't know if I know any greater invitation that has a promise of Jesus' presence than disciple making. Jesus said, I will be with you to the end of the age. If you want Jesus' presence, I encourage you to step into the mess of all of life disciple making. That is where he's found. He's found for me in the midst of these relationships. Jesus said in the Gospels, I'll build my church. He said to us, make disciples. I think a lot of our energy is wasted on trying to build the church instead of just making disciples. I think if we would just make disciples, Jesus could build his church. Think of all the energy wasted on building the church when he's saying, if you would pour out your soul into friends, if you would pour out your life into a few, I could build my church in a multiplied way that you could never imagine. What would it look like to have a table? I invited their imaginations into it. I said, guys, you may or may not want this, but you have an all-access pass into my everyday life. You have to see how I handle my finances. You have to see how I talk with my children and when I do it right and when I don't. You have to eat at my table. You have to see the way that I love my neighbors. Like, this is the life I'm inviting you into, and I have to see the way you love your neighbors, and I have to see the way you steward your sexuality. We have to talk together about all of life because this Jesus thing is an all of life thing, amen? And so it has to be all of life. They all sheepishly said yes. It's one of the hardest points is to convince them that I'm serious about that I really want them in my everyday life. Again and again, they're like, no, you're probably too busy. I'm like, no, along with my family, I am finite. You are my priority. I don't care how many people I speak to or what I do, your lives is my priority. And you seeing my everyday life, that's my priority. That's the invitation. With all that we're doing in 24/7, all the big dreams, all the justice initiatives, all the global prayer in nations, friends, he's inviting us to a table where we will have all of life friendship. Where a few can see your life. Maybe you feel like you can't take on the world, but can you give your life to a few? That's the invitation Floyd gave me. That's the invitation Jesus gave us. That is what Jesus modeled 70% of his time with a few people. It's a weird strategy to see billions reached. Jesus is what makes discipleship work. You may not feel smart enough or wise enough to make a disciple. You're probably not. Neither am I. What we do in our lives at this table is that we continually go to Jesus. When I'm asked a question, it's like, what does Jesus have to say about this? I have no idea. We go to Jesus, we go to Jesus, we go to Jesus. We gather around his word every single week to discover it. We build our lives around the core commands of Jesus. We begin to ask one another difficult questions like, have you preferred others above yourself this week? That's okay, especially those closest to you. That's super uncomfortable. Does my life reflect God's passion to reconcile the world? Have I honored God in my sexuality? We come to the Word and we open His commands and we build our life around that. And you might say, I don't know if I can do this disciple-making thing. I feel really insecure. God says, I promised all authority in the universe and my ever-living presence, you're going to be okay. Yeah? What we do in discipleship over and over is we go to Jesus. We go to Jesus. We go to Jesus. What is disciple making? Following Jesus in all of life. We go to Jesus. We go to his word. We go to Jesus. We go to Jesus. We go to Jesus. We call on Jesus. We're continually asking him to help us and show us what he is like and what he is doing. This table is our weekly gathering. We gather there at a little diner on Truce. It's the racial divide in Kansas City. At 6 a.m. on Thursdays, it helps all of us to be sanctified to wake up at 6 a.m. Tawana comes over to our table, and she's actually a magician. She's actually gone through all 6 of our orders without one word exchanged. She just looks, unless anyone says anything, she gets the order out. It's phenomenal. How much can $4.26 buy every week? $4.26. A sunrise breakfast that is absolutely glorious, but terrible coffee, but fantastic at 6 a.m. And God begins to move around that table every single week as we work. Curtis, who's up there, I want to show you him. He's on the left. Oh, go back one. Curtis is on the left, and, he was dealing with passivity in the deepest way. And just feeling afraid of everything. And so the father started calling him in his automotive shop to start waking up. And so he started sharing faith with the people around him. He led his coworker to the Lord after a while. And God started waking something up in him. And along the way, it took him about a year to get vulnerable enough to open up his heart. And about a year into the process, he realized that his whole life, he had needed a girl to be there at all times. I remember sitting there with him, and he started to realize the Father was calling him out of this place of what he said is my idolatry of needing a girl. And as we sat and waited, we said, Jesus, what do you think? And Jesus said, I love you, and I want to be everything that they couldn't be to you. And he said, I'm calling you to 18 months of celibacy. That felt like the end of the world to him. This is him free and content after about 18 months. He looks pretty good over there on the left. He started to get into this thing of intimacy so much that he actually built a shed in his backyard to be with Jesus. God started not only meeting him in that shed, but our whole neighborhood started coming to pray in the shed that he built out of 18 months of celibacy. Then God started waking him up and say, I didn't make you for your father's automotive shop. I've called you to minister to youth. And just a few weeks ago, a girl committed suicide in her high school. And I went to a meeting as 200 young people poured into the hall. And who was up there? Timid, passive Curtis led all 200 youth in prayer. Pouring his life into other students, he's got his handful. And the next one over that really funny smile in the glasses is Chiarelli. That's a great name. Adam Chiarelli. In his words, he says, I signed up for disciple making in this way. He said, I signed up for a program, but I got a table full of friends. He got baptized in the Holy Spirit. He started praying over people at his coffee shop. He saw a man get healed when he got filled with the Spirit. He was so jazzed about it, pastors started coming in. He started encouraging them. He's now started a prayer meeting for pastors in a part of our city. He's just a barista though, right? But he's an ordinary guy that knows Jesus. Now there's a part of our city where a church is going to be planted where he's encouraging pastors. Ki Young over there to my right, beautiful Korean, grew up, latchkey kid, spending his whole summer devoted to mathematics because his parents wanted him to be the best of the best. He thought disciple making was just servanthood, but he said, everything changed when you invited me to hang out with your daughters. I thought discipleship was do whatever the discipler said, but I found out at the heart of Jesus is, I have called you friends. How about Prentice there in the end? Man, I wish I had time to tell you about these guys' story. He was a broken, single dad with no hope, and God encountered him and broke in on his life. Turn the slide. I got to marry he and his wife, Jazzy, and they had two of the cutest kids you'll ever see in your life. Do you have the next picture? Look at those children. I mean, what? God began to work in such powerful ways in his life. He started to crack his heart open. He said it took a long time to let down the self-protection and get to the heart of friendship with Jesus. And the Lord started moving in his life. He lost his job in the middle of it. And God started revealing to him his identity was placed in his work. We started praying for him. A few weeks ago, the Lord led him into this project, the biggest redevelopment project in the whole of our city in the Northeast. 1.2 million square feet of redevelopment for a part of our city with 80 nations in it. And now I'm discipling a guy who's discipling an entire part of our city. Out of a single dad who lost his job, and the Lord began to work in him. He started giving his life to the kids in the neighborhood, and the Lord began to work. This is the life of Jesus. The life where he invites us to the table. You can almost glimpse it in the room? Like, if you just close your eyes, can you see your table? The ones that the Father is giving you. And can you look a little further to that great banquet where the guys at the diner on Troost at Nisi's are going to be together with the table at Macedonia and the table in Lebanon and the table in Switzerland and the table in Austria. And can you see all of us gather around this table? And Jesus, you can almost hear it. The clink of the glass and the breaking of the bread. And Jesus saying, I have called you friends. I have called you friends. You may not be able to do a lot, but Jesus is inviting you to invest your life in a few. What if for the rest of your life, you just had a few? And you didn't love them as a program or a project, but you let them into your everyday life. What if they were your friends and you shared with them the intimacy of Jesus? I just want to take a moment. Some of you are busy doing things in the nation. If you would close your eyes, I feel like there's a first invitation, and it's for those of you who say, I have forgotten that he calls me friend. Just for a moment. Jesus, by your Spirit right now, will you speak into the heart of my family? And will you speak, I have called you friend? And will you invite us again into the glorious mystery of that table? Let us know that we are your friends. And some of you here you're feeling insecure about this call to disciple making like I did. You're feeling the doubt. Some of you are out there making disciples already. But here's the deal. I want to invite you, whether you're doing it already or you feel insecure, if something's beating in your chest and you say, I want to go find my table. I want to find some people I can invest my life into, even if I don't know what in the world I'm doing. I want to invite you to stand, and I want to pray for you. Not because you have to, but because you know this is what the Lord's doing in your heart right now. Whether you need fresh encouragement to do it or you want to step into it for the first time, I just want to pray for you. Thank you, God. Father, as we see our brothers and sisters, I thank you for the movements of disciples that are going to come out of simple tables. I want to say over your heart right now, all authority in heaven and on earth is Jesus's. Go make disciples of all nations. You will baptize them into the identity of a Father, Son, and Spirit. Teach them to obey everything he's commanded. And I bless you now with the presence of your greatest advocate and friend, your King and Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.